Despite Corin being one of the only free attack agents available in ZenlessZoneZero, she has one of the worst reputations in the game, matched only by Billy. However, unlike Billy, Corin does actually have a lot of flaws and issues that do make her much more difficult to play. In today's video though, I'll be breaking down the best ways to avoid these problems while also teaching you everything you need to know to make her even stronger. Let's break it down. Corin, like other attack agents in ZenlessZoneZero, focus heavily on energy and their ability to deal big damage when an enemy is stunned. Corin's kit specifically works best against stationary foes, using long animations and charge attacks for maximum damage. This means she pairs best with stunners and dazers who disable enemies and allows Corin to go wild. However, as we'll see in a moment with her kit and combo breakdown, this playstyle does come with its own list of weaknesses. With that, let's get into her kit and understand how to play her better. Unlike the 7-paragraph essays from other skills in ZenlessZoneZero, Corin's are very short and simple. Corin's core passive increases the damage of her chainsaw after holding or tapping it repeatedly by 37.5%. If it weren't clear from her design or her enormous weapon, the chainsaw is a major part of Corin's damage and also her gameplay design. While her core passive is just an increase to her damage, this also does force her into using held charge slashes with her chainsaw. Next, we have Corin's additional ability, which is equally as straightforward as her core passive. When Corin is paired with another physical agent or someone from Victoria Housekeeping, she gains 35% additional damage to stunned enemies. Between her core passive and additional ability, Corin gains a decent amount of bonus damage to push her DPS further, but that's also one of the bigger misunderstandings for Corin as an agent. She does actually have decent damage, even compared to the likes of limited agents, despite her bad reputation. But again, as we'll see soon, damage is not the only thing that matters in an agent's kit, especially for someone like Corin. Let's talk now about Corin's basic attacks. This is a 5-part combo similar to other attack agents, but interestingly enough, her damage multipliers on these hits are much higher than usual. The 5th hit of this combo, for instance, has an 843% damage multiplier. Notably, however, this is at the cost of it taking longer to perform. This attack, alongside others in her kit, also feature the ability to hold down or repeatedly press her basic attack input on the 5th hit so that she can prolong her attack even more, which in turn gives her more damage. Moving along to Corin's special attack, her own are a series of chainsaw slashes, which can also be extended like her basic attack that we just mentioned. Additionally, while she gains invulnerability while holding down the skill 2, there are 3 more important things to know about this ability. First, it has one of the highest damage multipliers on a non-ultimate skill. This is interesting because you'd imagine that the character with one of the highest damage multiplier skills would be regarded as insane, but that's actually not the case. And that's because, second, it's one of the hardest skills to land on enemies. This is not always relevant since Corin can be paired with stunners or dazers to force enemies to stop moving, but it does remove some of her effectiveness, especially when fighting multiple enemies. And finally, the last thing you need to know is that the windup and animation of all Corin's skills can sometimes interfere with each other since moves can be extended, but this affects her EX special the most since it's a skill she wants to use the most. As we'll see in the combo section, spending time extending certain moves may also cause you to miss certain stun windows with attacks, which makes her a bit more difficult and uncomfortable to play. Admittedly though, Corin's dodge related skills are where her kit's weaknesses really start to show. Her dash attack specifically has one of the lowest damage multipliers and worst feeling controls that ZenlessZoneZero has to offer, but as with all other agents, her dodge counter is serviceable when on field and needing to avoid damage. Corin's assists follow the same sort of trend, having noticeably higher damage multipliers attached to them, and like her other skills, her assist follow-up also allows her to extend the chainsaw attack that she performs. But aside from this, her assists are very standard and unnoteworthy. Corin's chain attack has a respectable 1375% damage multiplier, and it can be used to eliminate multiple enemies quickly, especially when extended. Given the synergy between stun targets and Corin's damage, this is one of her more important skills. However, it is worth noting that her EX special attack has a higher multiplier, though it does come at the cost of energy. This is notable because other agents typically have higher chain attack multipliers than their EX specials, but this doesn't make her chain attack any less worth using. Corin's ultimate also has an insanely high multiplier, with it being higher than even someone like Juyuen's. Unlike other parts of her kit where there is a flaw or weakness to using this ability, however, this skill is just good. There really aren't that many weaknesses, it's a solid damage dealing ability. In terms of priority for skill upgrades, Corin can focus on her chain and special, followed by her assist, and finally ending things with her basic and dodge. As always, the major damage share from attack-based agents typically originate from chain or special attacks, so that means that they'll be the most important to upgrade. Following this are her assists, since performing them increases days, and ending the list are her basic and dodge abilities, since Corin is an attack agent that appreciates stunners being on field more than her. Corin has 2 combos that she can use to great effect, and to separate the 2, we'll categorize one as the multi-target combo and the other as the single target combo. As a quick disclaimer for this section, Corin may remind you of Ellen given their similar playstyle, faction, and agent type, but make no mistake, Corin does not have the same flexibility or on-field presence that someone like Ellen has. That doesn't mean she's incapable of clearing content, but rather it means that she's more focused on one specific playstyle as opposed to being more flexible. With this, let's talk about the AoE combo first. It's designed to clear multi-wave enemies and can definitely find great value in the critical nodes of Shiyu defense, but in order to begin this combo, we need to utilize our Dazer/Stunner. Unfortunately, Corin lacks the ability to quickly eliminate several enemies just with their basic attack, and as a result, she is reliant on stunners to activate a chain attack sequence for her to begin dealing AoE damage. With this, the AoE combo is to swap to your stunner, activate chain attack with the support, and end with a chain attack from Corin, then perform a basic or EX special to finish off any remaining enemies. The chain attack or EX special from Corin can also be extended if the opponents are tankier than usual, but truthfully, an attack agent's best choice for dealing AoE damage is to just use a chain attack on clumped up enemies to eliminate the low health opponents and use whatever additional abilities to finish off the stragglers. For single target fights, such as against bosses or elite monsters, a similar strategy will apply. You start with a stunner to fill the enemy's daze gauge, however the combo will then change based on the encounter. Against bosses with shorter stun durations, using long chain attacks or extending Corin's own chain attack might prevent her from getting the most out of her best skills during the stun window, and in such cases, you will then swap to a stunner, fill the daze gauge, and then perform a chain attack with Corin. With this, you'll then cancel the following chain attack so that Corin will stay on field after using her own chain, and that will leave you with extra time on Corin to begin using her best damage skills against the stunned enemy. This is where you will use her ultimate followed by an EX special that you extend in order to yield the highest damage possible. If this was way too much to think about, or if the enemy is stunned for longer, we can also change the combo to be simpler with the following: stun the boss with your Dazer, chain attack to your support, end the chain attack sequence with Corin, then perform her ultimate and finish with an extended EX special attack. All of the combos I just mentioned can be repeated as many times as possible until the enemy is defeated, so don't worry if they end up surviving one or two of these combos. Now let's talk about builds. Surprisingly, Corin has 3 sets that perform very well for her. The first is Fanged Metal, the second is Puffer Electro, and the third is Woodpecker Electro. Now, what's interesting is that usually Woodpecker or the element associated set will vastly outperform any other option for disk drive options, but based on calculations and tests done for Corin, Puffer Electro is also a strong choice too. This is because Corin's playstyle synergizes best with short bursts of damage, but I do need to include a disclaimer for this set. While Woodpecker Electro and Fanged Metal have passives that are much easier to manage and activate, being reliant on Puffer Electro means that fights where you aren't able to use several ultimates will leave other sets performing much better. Additionally, while Puffer Electro usually displays worse results, since attack agents can sometimes justify being on field. Now, despite this, I do want to say that Puffer Electro usually displays worse results, since attack agents can sometimes justify being on field and will want to perform their basic/dash attacks, but in Corin's case, her basics and dash attack are not nearly as worth performing given their weaker multipliers and sometimes clunky feel, and that's one of the major reasons why Puffer Electro also provides even more value. For 2-piece set options, Corin can use any combat-oriented set like Hormone Punk, Puffer Electro, Fanged Metal, or Woodpecker to great success, but of course, use the disk drive set with more roles, since that will likely end up being the difference maker for which set is better. My recommendation though for sets on Corin are 4-piece Fanged Metal and 2-piece Woodpecker. Let's move on to stats. For substats, Corin is your average crit focused damage dealer, so she'll focus on attack percent, crit rate, and crit damage as her priorities. The actual breakup of stats is honestly less important though, so long as you maintain a ratio of 1:2 for crit rate. For main stats, Corin has the following: in her 4th slot, a crit rate or crit damage disc depending on her substat rolls; in her 5th slot, an attack percent disc or a physical damage percent disc; and lastly, for a 6th slot, she's an attack agent after all, so an attack percent disc will be ideal. Something worth mentioning here as well is that attack percent will perform better in most cases with her 5th slot disc drive, simply because of how few sources of attack she has in her kit. This is especially true if she's using something like Fanged Metal as her 4-piece set effect, and attack is even more valuable if her W engine provides an element damage instead of attack percent as well. I'll go further into W engines later, but just know that having too much of one specific stat like attack or damage percent can actually lessen the value of either source, and therefore 5th slot attack percent is actually quite valuable for Corin. To wrap things up in the build section, my recommendation here is a 4th slot crit rate disc drive, a 5th slot attack percent disc, and another attack percent disc in the 6th slot. For sample stat lines, do know that these will depend on W engine, main stat choice, and team composition, but here are 2 potential builds that you can aim for. The first is for those with less time spent farming, and its 2.5k attack, 60 crit rate, and 120 crit damage. The second build is for those that are nearing ZenlessZoneZero's endgame, and that's 3000 attack, 70 crit rate, and 150 crit damage. Corin has two main W engine choices that work best for her. The first is Steel Cushion, and the second is Starlight Engine. Steel Cushion provides Corin with two of her most desirable stats in the form of physical damage and crit rate. The main downside to using this W engine is that positioning for a back attack for every single move can be difficult at times. Additionally, most calculations for Steel Cushion rate it as the best, only assuming that you're hitting the back of the enemy at least half of the time. The alternative to this is Starlight Engine with a solid attack increase and combat attack buff when performing dodge counters or quick assists. And like Steel Cushion, it does also have its own set of drawbacks and flaws. The main concern for Starlight Engine is whether performing a dodge counter or quick assist is realistic. In a Corin, Lycone, Sokaku team, for instance, ending with Sokaku's chain attack so that she can quick assist Corin onto field will actually take up more time than you think and can also result in Corin missing out on damage against a stunned target. Although there are ways to work around this, of course, I just wanted to mention this because it's something that you'll have to work around if you're using the two together. Now, you've probably noticed that I didn't mention Corin's signature, Housekeeper, but that's for good reason. Despite the energy regen and the physical damage increases, the attack increase from Starlight Engine outperforms this option by a decent amount. However, should you have this already upgraded, pulled for, etc., it is still a very usable option for Corin. Keep in mind, however, that Starlight Engine at rank 5 is much easier to obtain than a Housekeeper at rank 5, so choose wisely. My recommendation as a result of this is going to be Starlight Engine or Steel Cushion if you lose a 50-50 while pulling for another limited W engine. To be honest though, all options here that aren't the S rank W engine have their own set of difficulties when using them, so you can also simply just use what you have upgraded already, since it won't make that big a difference. Corin's Mindscapes are decent for value, but what's actually interesting about them is how they shape Corin's playstyle. Normally, when playing an attack agent and using their basic attacks, dash attacks, or dodge counters, you're in a fine spot and they deal okay, if not slightly less damage, but with Corin's Mindscapes, she is actively encouraged to avoid using any of these skills and instead focusing more on her EX specials, chains, and her ultimate. Isn't necessarily a bad thing though, since Corin works best in a burst window sort of playstyle anyway, but it does mean that using anything but these abilities will result in lower damage. Moving on to what her Mindscapes actually do though, her first Mindscape is nice and a minor but helpful increase to her DPS, with her damage increasing after using a chain or ultimate. Her second Mindscape provides a slightly bigger jump in value for DPS, but again, it does rely on performing more EX specials, chain attacks, and Corin's ultimate. The fourth Mindscape she gains access to also helps with managing her energy, but 7.2 energy every 16 seconds may not feel the most impactful in every single situation. However, with the sixth Mindscape, Corin gains another increase to her damage once again. When Corin extends one of her chainsaw attacks, she gains a stack of charge with a max of 40, and once she activates a chainsaw detonation through one of her skills, these stacks accumulated will then be consumed to deal bonus damage. Now, based on calculations done, the damage increase through this is not the most insane, but something you should know about this sixth Mindscape as well is that it scales off of attack percent, so do with that what you will. Now, in terms of teams for Corin, I have three that I found to work the best. Similar to Ellen when she first released, one of Corin's best teams pre-Caesar banner was Corin, Lycone, Sokaku for the additional ability synergy alongside the attack increase and stun damage bonuses that she gains. This team is amazing with all the bonuses that Corin gains when paired with the housekeeping allies, but one of the worst feelings about this team is the fact that the ice damage resistance shred and the ice damage increases play no role in boosting Corin's damage whatsoever. This team does still perform well despite the loss, and it's also very easy to play, similar to the Ellen, Lycone, Sokaku team. Stun with Lycone, set up an attack increase from Sokaku, and unleash Corin's damage against a stunned boss. After Caesar's release, however, exchanging Sokaku for Caesar has made this feel even better, since Corin now gains an anti-interrupt barrier alongside the 1000 attack increase. In most cases, Caesar over Sokaku provides a less clunky experience while also increasing the amount of damage that she can do with Caesar's debuff, but of course, this is assuming that you were a day 1 Caesar puller. Rest in peace, by the way, to everyone doing tower without her. The second team I found to work well with Corin is Corin, Qingyi, Caesar. This team is absolutely fantastic at boosting any damage dealer's potential DPS, and look no further than Zhu to prove why. Because of Corin and Zhu similar playstyles, it should come as no surprise that a team that boosts attack and stun damage at the same time by an insane amount would synergize perfectly together. But seriously, if you do have access to this team, simply stunning with Qingyi, swapping to Corin, and unleashing a 1000 attack boosted 80% stun damage multiplied chainsaw burst will simply leave you speechless. The final team that I found success with when testing Corin was Corin, Caesar, Lucy. This team relies more on Caesar and anomalies to get any reasonable amount of days against enemies, but this composition also has access to a different strategy, which is brute forcing encounters and avoiding stuns altogether. In this case, you would simply attack boost Corin with with Lucy and Caesar and start blowing up enemies, especially if you have Lucy's 6th Mindscape. Now ultimately though, this sort of playstyle can be more niche and situational, since the stun damage from Qingyi or Light Cone definitely helps more with Corin's positioning and damage, but in certain scenarios, just using an EX special that's boosted by 1600 attack can simply eliminate enemies faster than you think. But that's going to be it for today's video, guys. If you learned something or if you enjoyed today's video, make sure to check out the rest of my socials. Feel free to leave a comment, turn on the notification bell, and subscribe. But as always, guys, thank you again for watching. I appreciate all the support and love that you guys have been giving this sort of content. I will see you guys all next time. Stay safe, stay healthy.